Land trusts. Land trusts are really interesting. There's a lot of promise for land trusts, but I think in a wide variety of situations, they're just not appropriate. Let's talk about what they are first. So a land trust is really just a revocable living trust. That means that anytime you can fold up shop and the title can revert to the original grantor, the person who put the title into the land trust. The land trust splits legal and equitable title from management and control. So the trustee has legal and equitable title. They get listed, the trustee gets listed in the land title records, the real property records. But the beneficiary has the ability to control the asset, how it's going to be rented. They also have the right to receive the rents and other income that's generated by the property that's inside the land trust. That's interesting. Can we in some way form a land trust and get property out of our name to create privacy so that no one is going to know that we're the owner? Yes, but who's going to be the trustee? Because the way that property that's in a land trust is going to be listed in the title records, it's going to say, Jonathan Finiak, trustee of the 123 Main Street Land Trust. And that name is going to be in the title records. That person is going to be indexed in the title records. So that's going to be searchable. So then we get to the point where you can't be your own trustee, because if you were your own trustee, then your name's just going to be listed. It'd be the same as having it in your personal name. So the workaround there is there's two of them that I've seen. One is to name a third party to act as a trustee, a straw person who just is willing to give their name as the trustee and will serve in the strange capacity. And I see there's people on the internet who will do this for you. I have concerns with that. What kind of control does the trustee have? They can only act at the direction of the beneficiaries, yes, but there's a lack of trust that I have for just some random person on the internet that is going to be your trustee. The other solution is to name an LLC as the trustee. This is interesting, right? So you can form an anonymous LLC in a state like Wyoming, and that can be the trustee. But then you're not really avoiding the cost of just having the property in an LLC in the first place. You're having to go through all this rigmarole to achieve privacy. So that's sort of a weird situation. Another one is asset protection. And a revocable living trust, someone needs to be responsible if someone on that property is injured. Who is it? Is it the trustee? Well, if it's a trustee, that person doesn't want to take on the responsibility, especially if it's some random person on the internet, of being responsible for whatever happens on the party. It really is the person who has that right to possession, management, and control. That liability is going to fall on that person's shoulders. So what I see is many people say, well, I'm going to have an LLC as my trustee, or an individual acting in that trustee capacity, just really in name only. And then I'm going to set up another LLC to act as the beneficiary of my land trust. And this way I've got privacy and asset protection. And I get back to the point, I'm like, well, you could just do that with a single LLC instead of two LLCs plus this more complex structure. So that's one of the reasons I have a problem with land trusts. I just have a problem with them. I think there's a limited use case for a land trust. So let's think about situations where it might be useful. You already own property in your personal name and you want to create privacy. So you transfer your property into a land trust where you have a trustee, either not you or it's an LLC. And this way you're not connected to the real estate anymore. The problem is that title records and the way they're indexed and searchable, if you were ever an owner of a piece of real estate, someone's going to know. And that transfer you made to the land trust, I'm assuming you're not going to sell it to the land trust. It's going to just be a quitclaim $0 transfer. And it's going to be very obvious to anyone who looks, especially a plaintiff's attorney. They have plenty of resources available. They'll be able to see that you're still the owner of this land trust, right? So if you already own the property, it's not going to achieve your privacy goal, and you have to have two LLCs in order to create that asset protection goal. I think in that case, you're better off transfer the property into an LLC. Another one is that, okay, so you're buying the property outright and you're going to put it into a land trust right off the bat, and you're going to have a LLC as trustee, and then you're going to have maybe a beneficiary as LLC if you want asset protection, but you now have two LLCs, and I think it'd be better if you had just one LLC, just purchase the property outright in an LLC. The problem with a land trust purchasing, let's say it's a rental property, purchasing a rental property in a land trust, I've seen my clients have gone through this. So they say, no, I want a land trust, it's going to be fine. And they go and try to get a mortgage for the land trust. And the only way they can get a mortgage is if they are listed in land trust documents as trustee, individual trustee, and they're listed as the individual beneficiary, right? So in that case, at least the initial filing of the deed in the name of the land trust is going to include your name. Go back to step one, now you're exposed. You're not going to be able to hold that privately. So I think you wind up with a lender related problem that lenders don't want to lend against that land trust. So let's say that you're buying with cash. You're purchasing the property with cash and you're going to use a land trust. So we don't have the mortgage problem. We still have this problem of why wouldn't you just purchase the property for cash in an LLC? Why have a land trust with two LLCs to shield your identity? We don't have the mortgage problem. Potentially that makes sense, but why? There's a simpler solution, which is just to use an LLC. And what I've heard is that folks think that they can avoid a transfer tax. They can avoid a reassessment on the transfer. They can avoid a stamp tax. So that's Florida, California, many other states have this sort of reassessment if there's a change in beneficial ownership of the property. And there's been some interesting cases. One was where an individual sort of have a pocket deed almost, where they transferred the property to someone else and didn't record it. The reassessment should have occurred at the point in time where that beneficial interest in the land trust was assigned from an individual or from one entity to another entity. So that assignment of beneficial interest triggered the reassessment of the property and potentially a tax on it. And so we think about a situation where we can have the land trust filed, have your name as an individual as the beneficiary. You have a trustee that is an LLC. You bought it for cash, and then you want to transfer it without incurring a reassessment or anything else. Certain states will say that just because you didn't record it anywhere, the reassessment really did occur. There was a transfer at that point in time. And there's a lot of steps I think about from the perspective of asset protection. Is that going to stand up in court if there's litigation, someone's hurt on the land trust property and they go after the beneficiary, but the beneficiary who was originally listed was an individual and they transferred it to an LLC, but they never recorded that in any way or paid any tax on the assignment of beneficial interest? You basically, I call it, Schrodinger's transfer. It's a transfer because we want the asset protection, but it's not a transfer because we don't want to pay the stamp tax. I don't know how a judge would rule, but I think the judge would say these shenanigans are unacceptable, right? And we're going to hold you personally responsible. The original beneficiary who had the right of possession, management, and control is the individual. That individual is responsible. In the alternative, you really are a tax cheat, right? So you should have paid the tax on the transfer to the LLC from yourself as an individual, or from one LLC to another LLC, or whatever it is you're trying to do, but you didn't. The way the Florida statute reads, I'm not licensed in Florida, but I read these statutes because I find it interesting, is that an assignment of beneficial interest in a trust counts as a transfer for Florida purposes. So the stamp tax would apply. Stamp tax can be, 0.3, 0.5, 0.7, 1 point, there's all sorts of tax that come in, but it's a pretty significant amount. So that assignment of beneficial interest would trigger the tax being due. And again, we get to the situation, you're transferring the beneficial interest of the land trust to something else. You haven't paid the tax, so you're either a tax cheat or the transfer was invalid. Can't have it both ways. So let's get down to brass tacks. Where would a land trust potentially be appropriate? And this is the one case, this is the one type where I think a land trust is appropriate. It would be you're buying a property that is going to be your primary residence and you want privacy, but don't want to give up your deduction for property taxes. You don't want to give up your exclusion from capital gains on your primary residence. There's all these benefits that fall on you personally, but you want privacy. But you have to be paying with cash, because again, a lender's not going to lend against a land trust where there is a LLC as trustee. Primary residence with no mortgage, you want privacy. Land trust may make sense. Land trust with a trustee LLC and you as the beneficial owner. All these other situations, I wish they worked. I wish land trusts worked, but when you really think it through, I think you wind up with all these other problems. We do offer land trusts if they are appropriate. I highly recommend you speak with an attorney prior to embarking down the road of looking to implement a land trust for your property ownership.